Every text you send pushes them further away. Every social media check confirms their absence. Every anxious thought about whether they'll respond is a prayer to the God of separation, and that God answers faithfully. You're manifesting from lack, and lack only creates more lack. But what if I told you that tonight, in the next 30 minutes, you could flip the script entirely? What if by tomorrow morning, you were the one being chased? What if the very person you've been pursuing with desperation suddenly felt an inexplicable pull toward you that they cannot explain, cannot resist, cannot ignore? I'm going to tell you something that will sound impossible until you test it. Then it will sound like the only truth you've ever known. The person you want is not out there living independently of you making choices separate from your consciousness. They are you pushed out. They are a mirror. And right now that mirror is reflecting back to you exactly what you assume to be true about yourself, about them, about relationships, about your worthiness of love. Let me ask you something. When you think about this person, what is the dominant feeling? Be honest. Is it the warmth of being loved, or is it the ache of being ignored? Is it the certainty of being chosen, or is it the fear of being abandoned? Is it the peace of someone who knows they are deeply desired, or is it the anxiety of someone checking their phone every 3 minutes, hoping for a crumb of attention? That feeling, that state you're dwelling in, is your assumption. And your assumption is not a passive thought. It is the most creative force in the universe. It is, in the language I have come to understand, as truth, God itself. Consciousness creating reality. And right now, whether you know it or not, you are assuming something about this person and about yourself. And that assumption is hardening into fact before your very eyes. Here's what I've discovered after years of teaching this law, after watching hundreds of people transform impossible situations, after seeing the same pattern repeat itself with absolute precision. The moment you stop chasing, the moment you withdraw your attention from the state of wanting and step into the state of having, everything changes. Not because the other person suddenly decides to love you, but because you have changed the assumption, and they, being you pushed out, have no choice but to conform to your new state. Let me say that again, because this is the foundation of everything I'm about to teach you tonight. Everyone is you pushed out. That person you're obsessing over, checking up on, trying to manipulate into loving you. They are not a separate being with independent will opposing your desires. They are a reflection, a mirror. And mirrors don't decide what to show you. They simply reflect what stands before them. Right now you're standing before the mirror in the state of, I am not loved, I am not chosen, I am not enough. And the mirror, doing exactly what mirrors do, is showing you someone distant, cold, unavailable, uninterested. You think the problem is them. You think if you could just say the right thing, look the right way, be more interesting, more attractive, more valuable, then they would love you. But that's backwards. That's the entire world living backwards. The truth is this: you cannot change them. You were never meant to change them. There is no one to change but self. The only person who needs to transform is you. Not your appearance, not your personality, not your worthiness. Those are already perfect. What needs to transform is your assumption, your inner conviction about who you are in relationship to love, to this person, to being desired. And when that inner state changes, when you move from the consciousness of, I am unwanted, to the consciousness of, I am deeply loved and chosen, the person reflects that new state back to you automatically, inevitably, lawfully. Not because you convinced them, but because consciousness is the only reality, and the outer world has no choice but to mirror the inner world. Let me tell you about a woman I worked with. For 8 months, she had been texting a man who rarely responded. When he did respond, It was cold, brief, non-committal. She would analyze every word, craft perfect responses, wait hours before sending them, so she didn't seem desperate. She tried everything. No contact periods, reaching out casually, being mysterious, being open. Nothing worked, because she was doing all of it from the state of lack, from the assumption of, he doesn't want me, and I need to make him want me. Every single action, no matter how strategic, was saturated with that assumption. And assumption is always reflected. I asked her one question. When you think about him, what do you feel? And she was honest. She said, I feel anxious. I feel like I'm bothering him. I feel like I'm not enough for him. I feel like he's going to choose someone else. I said, then that is what you're manifesting. That anxious, not enough, afraid of abandonment feeling is your assumption about yourself in relationship to him. And as long as you maintain that assumption, he will continue to reflect it back. He has to. It's law. She asked the question everyone asks. But how do I change how I feel when the evidence is right there? When he's literally not texting me back? And I told her what I'm going to tell you tonight. You don't try to change the feeling by fighting with it. You don't try to force yourself to believe something your current state cannot accept. You simply step into a different state. You occupy a different version of yourself. Close your eyes for a moment. Right now, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine that the person you desire just sent you a text. Not a polite text. Not a breadcrumb. A text from someone who is absolutely captivated by you. A text that says, I can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you? How would you feel reading that? Not how would you react. How would you feel in your body, in your chest, in your nervous system? You would feel calm. You would feel chosen. You would feel like, of course, obviously. Why wouldn't they feel this way? I'm deeply desirable. That feeling, that state of being chosen, of being desired, of being loved, that is the state you need to occupy. Not occasionally. Not when you're doing a technique. As your dwelling place. As your identity. And here's the part that breaks most people's brains. You occupy that state before they text you. Before they reach out. Before there is any evidence in the 3D world. You assume the wish fulfilled now, and the evidence follows. It must. It is law. The woman I mentioned, I gave her one instruction. For 7 days, every time she thought about this man, she was to immediately shift her state. Not think about him from longing, but think from the state of being his person. The one he adores, the one he pursues, the one he cannot imagine his life without. Not as a future event, as a present reality. Every time the old anxious thought came, why hasn't he texted? She would catch it and replace it with the assumption, I am so deeply loved by him. He thinks about me constantly. I am his first thought in the morning and his last thought at night. And she would feel that, not as a wish, as a fact. Do you know what happened? Within 4 days, he texted her, out of nowhere, after weeks of silence. And the text wasn't casual. It was vulnerable. It was seeking. It was exactly the energy she had been assuming. Within 2 weeks, they were together. And when I asked her what changed, she said something I will never forget. I stopped needing him to choose me, and I started knowing he already had. The moment I stopped chasing in my mind, he started chasing in reality. This is the law of assumption. This is the principle Neville Goddard taught for 40 years. Consciousness is the only reality. The world is your mirror. There is no one to change but self. Every person in your life right now is reflecting back to you your assumptions about yourself. The cold, distant person is reflecting your assumption of unworthiness. The warm, loving person is reflecting your assumption of deservingness. The person who ignores you is showing you the part of yourself that believes you are ignorable. And the beautiful, liberating, empowering truth is this. The moment you change your assumption, the reflection must change. It cannot stay the same. A mirror has no will of its own. Most people spend years trying to change other people, trying to convince them, seduce them, prove their worth to them. And it exhausts them because they're trying to change the reflection instead of changing what stands before the mirror. But you tonight are going to learn a different way. The way of assumption. The way of living in the end. The way of occupying the state of the wish, fulfilled regardless of current evidence, and watching reality rearrange itself to match your inner conviction. Let me give you the technique. This is not complicated. Complicated is what keeps people stuck. This is simple, elegant, and if you do it with faith, it will change everything. Tonight, before you fall asleep, you are going to enter what Neville called the state akin to sleep, or SATS. This is the drowsy state right before you drift off, when your conscious mind relaxes its grip and your subconscious becomes impressionable. In that state, you're going to construct a scene. A short scene, no longer than 10 seconds, that implies the wish fulfilled. Not the wish being fulfilled. The wish already fulfilled. For a relationship, this might be you're lying in bed and you feel their arm around you. You hear them whisper, "I love you." You feel the warmth of their body next to yours. You feel totally at peace, totally chosen, totally loved. Or maybe it's simpler. You're looking at your phone and there's a text from them that says, "I'm so lucky to have you." Whatever scene you choose, it must imply that you are already together, that they are already yours, that the relationship you desire is already your lived reality. Now, here's the key. You don't visualize this scene from a place of longing. You don't think, "I hope this happens one day." You enter the scene as though it is happening now. You feel the feeling of it being real. You let yourself experience the relief, the joy, the peace of someone who is deeply loved. And you loop this scene over and over. You fall asleep in that scene. You let it be the last thought in your mind as you drift off. Why? Because the subconscious does not argue. It accepts what you impress upon it in that drowsy state. And once it accepts the new assumption, it begins to rearrange circumstances, thoughts, and events to match that assumption. You don't need to know how this person will come back. You don't need to figure out the bridge of incidents. Your job is not the how. Your job is the assumption. Assume they are yours. Feel it real. And then let the law do its work. But here's where most people fail. They do this once, maybe twice, and then they wake up, check their phone, see no text, and immediately return to the old state. See, it didn't work. They still don't want me. And in that moment, they've canceled out the entire practice, because they went back to the assumption of lack. You must persist. Neville said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and continue therein, for in so doing, you are shaping your future in harmony with your assumption." Continue therein. Not for one night. Not until you see evidence. You continue in that state as your new identity. The person who is loved. The person who is chosen. The person who is pursued. And every time the old thought comes, the doubt, the fear, the "what if they never come back?" you gently redirect. You say, "No, that's the old story. The new story is that I am deeply loved. That is the truth I choose to dwell in." Let me tell you what happens when you do this faithfully. When you maintain the assumption, despite contradictory evidence, despite their silence, despite appearances. At first, nothing seems to change. You're still sleeping alone. They're still not texting. And your rational mind will scream at you that this is foolish, that you're delusional, that you should just accept reality. But you hold the state. You persist in the assumption. You continue to fall asleep feeling loved, feeling chosen, feeling like you are their person. And then something shifts. It might be subtle at first. Maybe they cross your mind less during the day, not because you're suppressing thoughts of them, but because you feel so fulfilled in the assumption that you no longer need to think about them anxiously. Maybe you feel calmer, more at peace, like someone who already has what they want, and then without warning, they reach out. Or you run into them. Or circumstances shift in a way you could never have orchestrated. And when it happens, it won't feel like a miracle. It will feel inevitable. Like, of course this happened. I've been living here for weeks. Now I need to address something critical. This is not manipulation. This is not trying to control another person's free will. This teaching is not about bending someone to your desires against their will. This is about understanding that consciousness is the only reality. That the version of this person you've been experiencing, the cold, distant, uninterested version, is not the truth of who they are. It is simply the version of them that matches your assumption about yourself. When you change your assumption, when you move into the state of being loved, you're not changing them, you're changing yourself. And because they are, you pushed out the version of them that appears in your reality, shifts to match your new state. The version of them that loves you, pursues you, adores you, has always existed. You just weren't occupying the state that would allow that version to show up. It's like tuning a radio. The station where they love you has always been broadcasting. You were just tuned to the station where they ignore you. When you change the dial, when you change your assumption, you don't create a new reality. You simply tune into a different one that already exists. Some of you are thinking, but what if they're with someone else? What if they're married? What if they explicitly said they don't want me? And I'm going to say something that might challenge you. None of that matters. None of it. Those are circumstances. Circumstances are effects, not causes. The cause is always consciousness, always assumption. I'm not telling you to chase a married person or to disrespect boundaries. I'm telling you that if you truly occupy the state of being loved by this person, if you genuinely assume the wish fulfilled and persist in that assumption, the bridge of incidents will unfold in a way that is honorable, that harms no one, that serves everyone involved. You don't need to figure out how. You don't need to manipulate or scheme or interfere. You simply hold the state, and the law handles the rest. I have seen marriages that looked permanent dissolve because one person shifted their assumption. I have seen impossible situations resolve in ways no one could have predicted. Not because the law broke the rules, but because consciousness creates circumstances, and when consciousness shifts, circumstances must shift. But here's what I really want you to understand tonight. This teaching is not ultimately about getting a specific person back. It's about remembering who you are. You are not someone who begs for love. You are not someone who chases after crumbs of attention. You are not someone who shrinks themselves to fit into someone else's idea of worthy. You are consciousness itself. You are the creator of your reality. You are, in Neville's words, God, pushing out into expression. And when you remember that when you truly claim that identity, you stop chasing anyone. Because you know with absolute certainty that anyone worth having will be drawn to you, will pursue you, will recognize you as the one they've been looking for. This is not arrogance. This is self-concept. This is understanding that the world conforms to your inner state. And when your inner state is, I am deeply desirable, I am worthy of extraordinary love, I am someone people naturally gravitate toward, that becomes your lived experience. Tonight, I want you to make a decision. Not about whether this person will come back, but about who you are going to be from this moment forward. Are you going to continue being the person who chases, who begs, who checks their phone obsessively, who tailors their entire life around getting someone else's attention? Or are you going to step into the identity of someone who is so deeply loved, so profoundly chosen, that the idea of chasing anyone feels absurd? The moment you choose the second option, the moment you occupy that state and refuse to leave it, everything changes. Not someday, now. Because in consciousness, which is the only place where anything truly exists, the change has already happened. The 3D world is just catching up. Here's your practice for the next 7 days. This is non-negotiable if you want results. Every morning, the moment you wake up, before you check your phone, before you think about them, you spend 60 seconds in the state. You close your eyes and you feel what it feels like to be their person, to be loved by them, to be chosen by them. Not as a future event, as now. You let that feeling saturate your body. You breathe into it. You become it. Then throughout the day, every time they cross your mind, you immediately shift your state. You don't let yourself spiral into, "Why haven't they texted? What are they doing? Are they thinking about me?" Instead, you redirect. "I am so loved by them. They think about me constantly. I am their first choice." And every night as you fall asleep, you do your SATS practice. Your scene, your loop. Falling asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. 7 days. That's all I'm asking. 7 days of faithful assumption. 7 days of living in the end. 7 days of occupying the state of being loved instead of the state of being unwanted. And here's what I promise you. If you do this with true faith, if you maintain the assumption, despite what your eyes see, despite their silence, despite the circumstances, something will shift. It might be them, it might be you, it might be both. But you will not be the same person in 7 days that you are right now. You will have tasted what it feels like to stop chasing and start assuming. And once you taste that, you can never go back to the old way, because you'll realize that you were never powerless. You were never at the mercy of someone else's feelings. You were always the creator, and they were always the reflection. Stop chasing. Stop begging. Stop performing for love. Start assuming. Start occupying. Start living from the end. Assume you are loved. Assume you are chosen. Assume they cannot stop thinking about you. And watch how quickly they come running. Not because you manipulated them, but because you changed the state. And they, being you pushed out, had no choice but to conform to your new assumption. This is the law. This is the truth. This is the power you've always had, but perhaps forgot to use. Tonight you remember. Tonight you reclaim it. Tonight, you stop living from the outside in, and you start living from the inside out. Your consciousness is God. Your assumption is law. Your inner state creates your outer world. Go into the silence tonight and claim what is already yours. Feel it real. Live from the end. And tomorrow, wake up as the person who is deeply, completely, irrevocably loved. Because in consciousness you already are.